Welcome, dear friends, to the Crimson Academy's course on The Promised Day is Come. In this section, we will be introducing the work The Promised Day is Come by the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi. The Promised Day is Come was written in 1941, in the early years of the Second World War, and addressed to the Baha'is of the West. The Promised Day is Come reminded believers that the retributive calamity that had overcome humanity at that point in history was largely due to its ignorance of the modern message of God. In order to underline the importance of the divine call in this day, the Guardian quotes extensive passages from the writings of the central figures of the faith. The book comprises 130 pages. Shoghi Effendi includes some 50 pages of direct quotations from the writings, of which more than half run to an entire page. The rest are scattered throughout the book and the body of the text. As ever-escalating conflict gripped the world, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi reassured the Baha'i community of the genesis, direction, and necessity of the titanic upheaval mankind was experiencing. Underpinning his message was the notion that fears for the immediate future necessarily engendered hope for the distant future, and that though the severity of the calamity seemed overwhelming, it would inexorably result in worldwide acceptance of Baha'u'llah's message. He writes, "It, the judgment of God, is at once a visitation from God and a cleansing process for all mankind. Its fires punish the perversity of the human race and weld its component parts into one organic, indivisible, world-embracing community." Contrasting the distressing darkness of the past with the glorious radiance of the future, the beloved guardian explains that the path towards humanity's ultimate unification must, of necessity, comprise of a stage of adversity and discord. Although the folly and tumult of strife blacken the annals of mankind, this would constitute a prerequisite for worldwide reconciliation and a lasting universal peace. The beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi writes, "We are indeed living in an age which, if we would correctly appraise it, should be regarded as one which is witnessing a dual phenomenon. The first signalizes the death pangs of an order, effete and godless, that has stubbornly refused, despite the signs and portents of a century-old revelation, to attune its processes to the precepts and ideals which that heaven-sent faith proffered it. The second proclaims the birth pangs of an order, divine and redemptive, that will inevitably supplant the former, and within whose administrative structure an embryonic civilization, incomparable and world-embracing, is imperceptibly maturing. The one is being rolled up and is crashing in oppression, bloodshed, and ruin. The other opens up vistas of a justice, a unity, a peace, a culture such as no age has ever seen. The former has spent its force, demonstrated its falsity and barrenness, lost irretrievably its opportunity, and is hurrying to its doom. The latter, virile and unconquerable, is plucking asunder its chains and is vindicating its title to be the one refuge within which a sore-tried humanity purged from its dross, can attain its destiny. The document charts the history and evolution of the Baha'i faith and describes in detail the lives of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. In surveying the nature of the international scene in the context of the early stages of Baha'i history, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi also provides a detailed description of the persecution and opposition that early believers faced in 19th century Iran. A series of messages of the Bab and Baha'u'llah are also included in the text. They were originally addressed to those despotic monarchs who were largely responsible for the wrongs of society and who were glorying in the pomp and pageantry of a kingship as yet scarcely restricted by constitutional limitations, or entrenched within the strongholds of the seemingly inviolable ecclesiastical power. The beloved guardian presents both a comprehensive account of the Bab and Baha'u'llah's letters to the sovereigns of the world, and an assessment of the degree of success and consequences of those appeals in gaining support for the nascent faith. Some rulers, for example, brushed aside the messages disdainfully. Others subjected individual adherents to unthinkably cruel treatment. The beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi describes how these monarchs precipitated the crumbling of their respective dynasties by failing to answer Baha'u'llah's claim. One by one, he explains, in impressive detail and in characteristically evocative terms, how, when, and why these autocratic regimes in both the East and the West ultimately fell. Shoghi Effendi was, however, wary that the teachings of Baha'u'llah be misconstrued as being disparaging to the notion of kingship and monarchy. On the contrary, the beloved guardian reminds Baha'is that the principle of kingship is eulogized. The rank and conduct of just and fair-minded kings is extolled. The rise of monarchs ruling with justice and even professing his faith is envisaged, and the solemn duty to arise and ensure the triumph of Baha'i sovereigns is inculcated. The beloved guardian, Shoghi Effendi, draws a further parallel between the decay of monarchical institutions and the declining influence of the world's spiritual leaders, and offers an extensive overview of the various passages His Holiness Baha'u'llah addressed collectively to those leaders. The heads of the ecclesiastical orders, particularly in the Muslim world, were the first who hoisted the standard of revolt and inflamed the ignorant and subservient masses against the faith. As with the monarchy, the beloved guardian revealed that the calamities that afflicted these ecclesiastical hierarchies, Christian and Muslim alike, were foretold by Baha'u'llah's message. This great retributive calamity, for which the world's supreme leaders, both secular and religious, are to be regarded as primarily answerable as testified by Baha'u'llah, should not, if we would correctly appraise it, be regarded solely as a punishment meted out by God to a world that has, for 100 years, persisted in its refusal to embrace the truth of the redemptive message preferred to it by the supreme messenger of God in this day. It should be viewed also, though to a lesser degree, in the light of a divine retribution for the perversity of the human race in general, in casting itself adrift from those elementary principles which must at all times govern and can alone safeguard the life and progress of mankind. Humanity has, alas, with increasing insistence, preferred instead of acknowledging and adoring the Spirit of God as embodied in his religion in this day, to worship those false idols, untruths, half truths, which are obscuring its religions, corrupting its spiritual life, convulsing its political institutions, and corroding its social fabric and shattering its economic structure. In concluding, the beloved guardian Shoghi Effendi emphasizes that it was not His Holiness Baha'u'llah's intention to dismiss or belittle the teachings of other dispensations, but simply to impress upon his followers the principle of the progressiveness and continuity of divine revelation, and to convey the idea that these seemingly disparate revelations were, in fact, united by a shared purpose and by the commonality of the fundamental values that they enshrine. The world is, in truth, moving on toward its destiny, the beloved guardian explains. The interdependence of the peoples and nations of the earth, whatever the leaders of the divisive forces of the world may say or do, is already an accomplished fact. Its unity in the economic sphere is now understood and recognized. The welfare of the part means the welfare of the whole, and the distress of the part brings the distress to the whole. The fires lit by this great ordeal are the consequence of men's failure to recognize the revelation of Baha'u'llah. Dear friends, we'll share with you a few further quotations from the Promised Day is Come. A tempest, unprecedented in its violence, unpredictable in its course, catastrophic in its immediate effects, unimaginably glorious in its ultimate consequences, is at present sweeping the face of the earth. Its driving power is remorselessly gaining in range and momentum. Its cleansing force, however, much undetected, is increasing with every passing day. Humanity, gripped in the clutches of its devastating power, is smitten by the evidences of its resistless fury. It can neither perceive its origin, nor probe its significance, nor discern its outcome. Bewildered, agonized, and helpless, it watches this great and mighty wind of God invading the remotest and fairest reaches of the earth, rocking its foundations, deranging its equilibrium, sundering its nations, disrupting the homes of its peoples, wasting its cities, driving into exile its kings, pulling down its bulwarks, uprooting its institutions, dimming its light, and harrowing up the soils of its inhabitants. And dear friends, this is from Promised Day is Come, page 1. Who is the ruler? May it not be confidently asked, whether of the East or of the West, who at any time since the dawn of so transcendent a revelation has been prompted to raise his voice, either in its praise or against those who persecuted it? Which people has, in the course of so long a captivity, felt urged to arise and stem the tide of such tribulations? Who is the sovereign, excepting a single woman shining in solitary glory, who has, in however small a measure, felt impelled to respond to the poignant call of Baha'u'llah? Who amongst the great ones of the earth was inclined to extend this infant faith of God the benefit of his recognition or support? Which one of the multitudes of creeds, sects, races, parties, and classes, and of the highly diversified schools of human thought considered it necessary to direct its gaze towards the rising light of the faith, to contemplate its unfolding system, to ponder its hidden processes, to appraise its waiting message, to acknowledge its regenerative power, to embrace its salutary truth, or to proclaim its eternal verities? Who among the worldly wise and the so-called men of insight and wisdom can justly claim, after the lapse of nearly a century, to have disinterestedly approached its theme, to have considered impartially its claims, to have taken sufficient pains to delve into its literature, to have assiduously striven to separate facts from fiction, or to have accorded its cause the treatment it merits? Where are the preeminent exponents, whether of the arts or sciences, with the exception of a few isolated cases, who have lifted a finger or whispered a word of commendation in either the defense or the praise of a faith that has conferred upon the world so priceless a benefit, that has suffered so long and so grievously, and which enshrines within its shell so enthralling a promise for a world so woefully battered, so manifestly bankrupt? Friends, this is from Promised Day Is Come, pages 20 through 21. God does not only punish the wrongdoings of his children, he chastises because he is just, and he chastens because he loves. Having chastened them, he cannot in his great mercy leave them to their fate. Indeed, by the very act of chastening them, he prepares them for the mission for which God has created them. God's purpose is none other than to usher in ways he alone can bring about, and the full significance of which he alone can fathom, the golden age of a long divided, a long afflicted humanity. Its present state, indeed, even its immediate future, is dark, distressingly dark. Its distant future, however, is radiant, gloriously radiant, so radiant that no eye can visualize it. Dear friends, this is from Promised Day Is Come, pages 189 through 190. Then, with the emergence of Baha'u'llah's New World Order, will the coming of age of the entire human race be proclaimed and celebrated by all the peoples and nations of the earth. Then will the banner of the Most Great Peace be hoisted. Then will the worldwide sovereignty of Baha'u'llah, the establisher of the kingdom of the Father foretold by the Son and anticipated by the prophets of God before him and after him, be recognized, acclaimed, and firmly established. Then will a world civilization be born, flourish, and perpetuate itself, a civilization with a fullness of life such as the world has never seen nor can as yet conceive. Then will the everlasting covenant be fulfilled in its completeness. Then will the promise enshrined in all the books of God be redeemed, and all the prophecies uttered by the prophets of old come to pass, and the vision of seers and poets be realized. Then will the planet, galvanized through the universal belief of its dwellers in one God and their allegiance to one common revelation, mirror within the limitations imposed upon it the effulgent glories of the sovereignty of Baha'u'llah, shining in the plenitude of its splendor in the Abha paradise, and be made the footstool of his throne on high, and acclaimed as the earthly heaven capable of fulfilling that ineffable destiny fixed for it from time immemorial by the love and wisdom of its Creator. Not ours, puny mortals that we are, to attempt at so critical a stage in the longing and checkered history of mankind, to arrive at a precise and satisfactory understanding of the steps which must successively lead a bleeding humanity, wretchedly oblivious of its God and careless of Baha'u'llah, from its Calvary to its ultimate resurrection. Not ours, the living witnesses of the all subduing potency of his faith, to question for a moment, and however dark the misery that enshrouds the world, the ability of Baha'u'llah to forge with the hammer of his will and through the fire of tribulation upon the anvil of his travailing age, and in the particular shape his mind has envisioned, these scattered and mutually destructive fragments into which a perverse world has fallen, into one single unit, solid and indivisible, able to execute his design for the children of men. Ours, rather the duty, however confused the scene, however dismal the present outlook, however circumscribed the resources we dispose of, to labor serenely, confidently, and unremittingly, to lend our share of assistance in whichever way circumstances may enable us to the operation of the forces which, as marshaled and directed by Baha'u'llah, are leading humanity out of the valley of misery and shame to the loftiest summits of power and glory. And dear friends, this is from Promise Day Has Come, pages 202 through 204. Thank you, dear friends.